I need to tell you something. It's a confession of sorts, and a warning I should have delivered years ago. For a long time, I've held a truth that I knew in my bones, a reality I saw unfolding from a unique vantage point, yet I remained quiet. I told myself it wasn't my place to sound the alarm. I reasoned that people wouldn't listen, that perhaps my perspective was skewed, that maybe, just maybe, I was wrong. But I wasn't wrong. With every passing day that I chose silence over truth, I watched the cracks in the foundation of our world spread wider and deeper. And now we are perilously close to running out of time. The weight of that silence is a regret I carry, a burden of not have been louder, clearer, and far more insistent. I chose the path of diplomacy when the situation demanded blunt honesty. I chose the comfort of the status quo over the discomfort of sounding an alarm. What I am about to share with you isn't designed to be comfortable. It is not a message that will leave you warm or secure, but it is real, and if you are taking the time to read this, you deserve to know what I have been witnessing. Before I delve deeper into the mechanics of what is happening, I need to ask you something, and I implore you to answer with unflinching honesty, at least to yourself. Have you felt it? That persistent, growing unease that gnaws at the edges of your thoughts? That subtle but unmistakable feeling that something fundamental is breaking? That the world you were raised to believe in is slipping through your fingers, being replaced by something more volatile, more unstable? If you have felt that shift, that quiet tremor in the bedrock of society, I want you to type the word yes in the comments below. Because if enough of us finally admit that we feel it, perhaps we can collectively stop pretending that everything is fine. Here is what I have been watching, the slow-motion crisis I should have been shouting about from the rooftops years ago. The intricate systems we have constructed, our economic structures, our social contracts, our political institutions, are not merely flawed. They are in the process of breaking down. The reason most people haven't noticed, or have chosen not to, is because this collapse isn't loud and cinematic like a Hollywood disaster film. It is a quiet, gradual, and insidious process of erosion. It's like a termite infestation in the walls of a great house. From the outside, everything looks solid, but the internal structure is being hollowed out day by day. By the time the majority of people finally see the sagging roof and the buckling walls, it will be far too late to do anything but watch it fall.
Let me begin with the world I know best, the economy. The financial system you trust, the one that you have been told is the bedrock of modern civilization, the very system that holds your retirement account, your savings, your family's future, it is built upon a foundation that has been cracking for decades. I have watched those cracks splinter and spread. I have seen the internal reports, the frantic warnings exchanged in hushed tones behind closed doors. I have sat in boardrooms and conference halls with people who understand precisely how fragile this entire edifice is, and I have heard them laugh it off, kick the can down the road, and operate under the fatal assumption that someone else, at some later date, will come along to fix it. But here is the terrifying truth. There is no later. We are living in the later they always spoke of. Here is the fundamental truth they do not tell you in school or on the evening news. The money in your bank account, the numbers you see on the screen when you check your balance, is not real in the tangible way you might think. It is a complex system of digital ledgers, a promise backed primarily by one thing: trust. It is sustained by the collective belief, the shared agreement that those numbers on a screen represent tangible value. But what happens when that trust begins to fray? What happens when a critical mass of people stops believing in the promise? I can tell you what happens because I have obsessively studied every major economic collapse in human history, from the fall of Rome to the Weimar Republic. everything falls apart, and it happens with a speed that shocks even the most cynical observers. I am not talking about some distant dystopian science fiction scenario. I am speaking about something that has a very real probability of happening within your lifetime, perhaps within the next decade, maybe even sooner. The warning signs are not hidden. They are screaming at us from every direction, if only you know how to read them. We see it in the staggering levels of sovereign debt, mountains of borrowed money so vast they can never be repaid in any conventional sense. We see it in the unprecedented creation of new currency by central banks, a desperate measure that devalues every single dollar you have worked so hard to earn. We see it in the ever-widening chasm between the ultra-wealthy who own the assets and everyone else who is left to struggle with the rising cost of living.
The very institutions designed to protect you, governments, central banks, regulatory bodies, are not equipped to handle the storm that is gathering on the horizon. I knew this. I have known this for years, and I kept my mouth shut. I told myself it was not my responsibility to induce panic. Surely, I thought, the people in charge, the brilliant minds at the helm, must have a plan. But they do not. Or, if there is a plan, it is not designed to protect the average citizen. It is designed to protect the system itself, even if that means sacrificing the people who live within it. Have you ever felt that the system seems to work for everyone but you? Let me know your story in the comments section. You are not alone in feeling this way. I should have been a screaming, relentless voice of warning. I should have leveraged every platform, every interview, every ounce of influence I possess to make you aware of the fragility of it all. But I didn't. I was distracted, focused on building my companies. I poured my energy into electric cars, into reaching for Mars, into advancing artificial intelligence. I told myself those endeavors mattered more, that they were my contribution to building a better future. And they do matter, profoundly so. But what good is designing a city on another planet if the civilization on this one collapses before we can ever get there? What is the point of creating a more sustainable future if the present unravels into chaos? Let me share with you the things I've seen that keep me awake at night, the scenarios that play out in my mind in the quiet hours before dawn. I have seen detailed simulations of our global supply chains, and I can tell you they are shockingly fragile. A single significant disruption, be it a geopolitical conflict, a natural disaster, or a pandemic, can cause a domino effect, seizing up the entire system that delivers food to your grocery store and fuel to your gas station. I have seen our overwhelming dependence on a complex technological infrastructure that is vulnerable to failure and attack, built upon physical infrastructure that is, in many parts of America, literally crumbling. We are living in a glass house, assuming no one will ever throw a stone. And I have seen historical data on how quickly social order can disintegrate when people become desperate, when they feel betrayed and abandoned by the systems they were told would protect them. But the part that terrifies me the most is not the fragility of our systems, but the fragility of our collective psychology. I have observed how deeply unwilling people are to confront uncomfortable truths. We, as a species, seem to prefer a comforting lie to a difficult reality. We build our lives on assumptions of stability and continuity, and we filter out any information that threatens that worldview. We wait until a full-blown crisis forces our hand, robbing us of the very choices we had when we could have acted proactively. If this resonates with you, and you're ready to face reality to build a stronger future, hit that like button to show you're committed to this journey of awareness. I have sat in private, off-the-record meetings with world leaders, with the heads of the most powerful central banks, with financiers who move markets with a single phone call. These are people who have access to data and intelligence that the public will never see. And do you know what I have consistently noticed in their private conversations? They are worried, deeply, profoundly worried, but they cannot say it publicly. The paradox they are trapped in is that the moment they admit the true scale of the risk, the very panic they are trying to avert becomes an immediate and unstoppable certainty. The system, as one of them once told me, runs on confidence. So their job becomes a performance, a grand act of reassurance. They smile for the cameras, they deliver speeches filled with calming platitudes, they insist that everything is under control, all while privately modeling scenarios that would send a chill down your spine. And for years, I participated in that silence. I knew what they knew, and I said nothing. I convinced myself that speaking out would only make things worse, that people needed to maintain faith in the system. I hoped, perhaps naively, that we would innovate our way out of the corner we had painted ourselves into. But we haven't, and things are getting worse. Let's talk about what is happening to you right now that most people don't fully comprehend. Your purchasing power, the real-world value of your money, is being systematically destroyed. The dollars you work for, the savings you carefully set aside, the foundation of your financial planning, it is worth less and less each and every day. This isn't happening because you are failing or because you made poor choices. It is happening by design. The system, as it is currently constructed, requires a certain level of inflation to function. It needs your wealth to slowly evaporate over time so that the monumental piles of debt can be managed, so that governments can continue to fund their operations through deficit spending, so that the illusion of perpetual economic growth can be maintained. You are being robbed in slow motion, and it is entirely legal. It is called monetary policy. It is framed as responsible economic management. But the end result is the same. You work harder, you save more diligently, and yet you feel like you are falling further and further behind. I watched this happen while I focused on my companies, telling myself it was not my problem to solve. What's one change you've had to make in your life because of the rising cost of everything? Share it below. Let's see how widespread this is. But it is my problem. It is my problem because I have children who will inherit the consequences of this mess. It is my problem because I have tens of thousands of employees whose futures and families depend on a stable society. It is my problem because I am a human being living in a civilization that appears to be accelerating toward a cliff's edge, and my continued silence would make me complicit in the disaster. So let me state plainly what I should have told you years ago. The comfortable middle-class life that generations of Americans were taught to believe was their birthright is not guaranteed. The stability you assume will always be there, like the rising of the sun, is an illusion. The systems you place your trust in to protect you, your government, your bank, your pension fund, your job, are all far more fragile than you have ever been led to believe. I am not saying this to frighten you, though a healthy dose of concern is entirely appropriate. I am saying this because you need to prepare. You need to understand the true nature of the game you are in so you can make different choices. You need to take steps to protect yourself and the people you love so that you are not caught completely by surprise when the landscape shifts. Because it is going to shift. The only question that remains is whether you see it coming and adapt, or whether it hits you like a tidal wave you never saw forming. For years, I have been building companies that I hope will serve as long-term solutions. Electric vehicles to lessen our dependence on volatile fossil fuels, solar energy to decentralize power generation, space technology to give humanity a backup plan. But those are solutions for long-term problems. The short-term crisis is already upon us, and I should have been warning you about it all along, instead of just quietly working on my projects. Let me be more specific about the converging forces I see that you need to understand. First, the debt. It's not just government debt, it's corporate debt, household debt, student loan debt. The entire global economy is saturated with it at levels that defy historical precedent. There is no realistic scenario in which this debt gets repaid in today's dollars. The only way out for the debtors, the governments and large corporations, is to devalue the currency itself through inflation. This makes the debt easier to service, but it is a direct transfer of wealth from savers and wage earners to the indebted institutions. You are going to pay for this. In fact, you already are. Every time you go to the grocery store and see higher prices, every time your utility bill goes up, every time your paycheck doesn't stretch as far as it did last year, that is you, personally, paying the price for a system that has become fundamentally broken. If this explanation clarifies things for you and you want to learn more about protecting your finances, let me know by commenting with the number 1 below. Second, the social fabric is tearing. I have watched with growing alarm as our communities fragment, as people stop trusting one another, as faith in our core institutions, from the media to the government to the justice system, evaporates. When times get hard, and they will, this lack of social cohesion is incredibly dangerous. A society is more than just an economy. It is a web of relationships, shared values, and mutual trust. When that web tears, societies become unstable with terrifying speed. When people no longer trust their neighbors, their leaders, or the fairness of the system, the stage is set for conflict and chaos. Third, the centralization of power is accelerating at an alarming rate. A smaller and smaller number of people and corporations now control a larger and larger share of our resources, wealth, and information. Concentrated power, no matter how well-intentioned it may initially seem, is always vulnerable to corruption and abuse. I have seen up close how policy is really made, how decisions that affect the lives of hundreds of millions of Americans are crafted by small, unelected groups in closed-door meetings. And I can assure you, most of those decisions are not being made with your best interests at heart. They are made to benefit and perpetuate the system that keeps those very people in power. And here is what I should have been shouting from every platform I have. You need to become more self-reliant. You must actively work to depend less on fragile, centralized systems that can fail you, and depend more on your own skills, your local relationships, and the resources that you can directly control. You need to understand what is happening so you can make informed choices about your money, your career, and the way you live your life. I am not telling you to panic. Panic is a useless emotion that leads to poor decisions. I am telling you to prepare. I am urging you to think with a clear and rational mind about what happens if the systems you depend on stop working as you expect them to. What is your plan if your currency suddenly loses a significant portion of its value? What is your plan if supply chain disruptions mean certain goods are unavailable for weeks or months? What is your plan if the job market undergoes a radical transformation? These are no longer hypothetical questions for a dystopian novel. These are practical scenarios we all need to start thinking about. I deeply regret not pushing you to think about them years ago. If you find this call for preparation valuable, please consider sharing this with someone you care about. Spreading awareness is the first step. I know what some of you are thinking. Elon, you're a billionaire. This doesn't affect you the way it affects us. And in some ways, you are right. I have resources that most people do not, which provides a significant buffer. But that does not make me immune to what is coming. My companies are deeply integrated into the global economy and depend on stable systems to function. My children will have to live in whatever world we collectively create or fail to create. And beyond any personal considerations, I genuinely care about the future of human civilization. It has been the driving purpose of my life, even if my track record of speaking up on this particular issue suggests otherwise. So here is what I am asking you to do, what I should have been asking you to do all along. First, educate yourself. Learn how the financial system actually works, not the sanitized version you were taught in high school economics. Understand what inflation really is, an expansion of the money supply, and how it erodes your wealth. Understand the mechanics of debt and why your purchasing power keeps declining no matter how hard you work.
Second, diversify what you depend on. Do not put all of your trust in a single currency, a single system, a single country, or a single job. The more your well-being is tied to a single point of failure, the more vulnerable you become when that system inevitably experiences stress or breaks. Think about diversification in every aspect of your life. Third, build real, tangible skills. Learn how to create value in the world that does not depend solely on a paycheck from a large corporation that could lay you off tomorrow. Learn how to fix things, how to build things, how to grow things. In a world of increasing abstraction and fragility, practical skills become a form of currency that can never be devalued. The more self-reliant you are, the better you will be able to weather any storm that comes. And finally, strengthen your community. I know we live in an age where we are more atomized and isolated than ever, connected to screens instead of our neighbors. But this is a trend we must reverse. When large, centralized systems fail, it is our local communities that save us. It is the real-world relationships with people who know you, trust you, and can help you that become the ultimate safety net. Stop assuming someone else is going to fix this. The politicians are not going to fix it. They are too invested in the current system. The banks are not going to fix it. They are profiting handsomely from it. The wealthy are not going to fix it. Most of them are insulated from the immediate consequences. If anything is going to change for the better, it will be because regular people like you understand what is happening and begin to make different choices in their own lives. If you are ready to take these steps, please subscribe and turn on notifications, because this is the beginning of a much larger conversation we need to have. I know this is heavy. I know you likely clicked on this expecting something entirely different, and instead you have been confronted with a message that everything is more fragile than you thought. I understand that. Part of you wants to dismiss this, to label me as an alarmist, to believe that I am exaggerating. Part of you wants to close this window and go back to feeling secure in the world you've always known. But I am asking you to sit with this discomfort for just a moment longer, because that discomfort you feel is your own intuition recognizing a kernel of truth, even when your conscious mind wants to reject it. You have already felt that something is off. You have already noticed that the rules seem to be changing, and that the future you were promised looks less and less certain. I am not planting that feeling in you, I am merely giving it a name. I am confirming what a part of you already knows to be true. Let me be perfectly clear about something I may not have stressed enough earlier. This is not a message about doom. This is not a call to give up, to hide in a bunker, or to resign yourself to the worst possible outcome. This is a call to wake up. It is about seeing the world clearly, perhaps for the first time, so that you can act with intelligence and purpose. History teaches us a consistent lesson. The people in societies that successfully navigate major transitions are not the ones who bury their heads in the sand and pretend nothing is wrong. They are the ones who see change coming, accept the new reality, and adapt before they are forced to do so by catastrophic events. Let me tell you about a specific moment that crystallized all of this for me. A few years ago, I was in a private meeting with some of the most respected economists in the world, people who advise governments and central banks, individuals with access to data that would stagger the average person. I asked them a direct question, point blank. What is your honest, off-the-record assessment? How stable is this whole thing, really? The room fell silent for a moment. Then one of them, a man whose name you would instantly recognize, looked me in the eye and said something I will never forget.
He said, "The system runs on confidence. The moment a critical mass of people truly questions it, it falls apart. Therefore, we cannot tell them the absolute truth. Our job is to maintain the illusion of stability until we can figure out a solution." I sat there, and a cold realization washed over me. What if you don't figure out a solution? What if the problem is too big, too structural, too deeply baked into the system to be fixed from within? What happens to all the millions of hard-working people who placed their faith in that illusion? That was the moment I understood. They are not going to save you. Not because they are evil or malicious, but because they are trapped in a system that requires them to maintain confidence, even when that confidence is no longer warranted. They cannot tell the truth without triggering the very collapse they are trying to prevent. So they smile, they reassure, and they hope that somehow, miraculously, things will work out. But hope is not a strategy. And waiting for someone else to solve problems of this magnitude is a form of delusion. What truly keeps me up at night now is the thought of all the regular people, the decent, hard-working, responsible individuals who did everything they were told was right, who are going to be financially devastated by this. I think about the people who diligently saved for retirement in a currency that is being purposefully devalued. I think about the people who invested in pension plans that are based on wildly optimistic assumptions about future market returns. I think about the people who built their entire lives around careers and industries that could be rendered obsolete by the coming shifts. People who trusted the experts, trusted the institutions, and played by the rules, only to discover too late that the entire game was rigged against them. And I think to myself, I could have warned them. I had the platform. I had the credibility. I had the information. And I chose comfort over courage. I chose not to be the bearer of bad news. That is the regret I am living with. And I am trying, in my own way, to make up for it now, even if it is late in the game. I hope I am wrong about all of this. I genuinely hope that the systems hold together, that the smart people in charge do figure it out, and that we muddle through without any major disruption. But I cannot bet my family's future on hope, and neither should you. Because consider the two possibilities. If I am wrong, and you take these steps toward greater self-reliance and resilience, the worst-case scenario is that you are simply more prepared than you needed to be. You will have more skills, more savings, a stronger community, and a more diversified financial life. There is no downside to that. But if I am right, and you choose to ignore this warning, the consequences could be devastating for you and your family. That is the risk I am no longer willing to take with my silence. So here is my final request to you. Take this seriously. Not with hysteria, not with panic, but with a calm and appropriate sense of urgency. Think about what I have said. Do your own research, look at the evidence for yourself, and make your own assessment. But please, do not simply dismiss this because it is uncomfortable, or because accepting it would require you to change how you think and live. The single biggest mistake you can make right now is to assume that everything will be fine simply because for most of your life it has been. That is not how history works. Periods of stability always come to an end. Systems always break. And the people who see the change coming and prepare are the ones who not only survive, but are positioned to thrive in the new world that emerges. I regret not telling you this sooner. I regret every year of my silence. But I am telling you now, and what you do with this information is entirely up to you. Just do not make me regret that when I finally spoke up, you chose not to listen. Share this with someone you care about, someone who needs to hear this message. Subscribe if you want to continue this honest conversation about what is really going on and what we can actually do about it. And now, tell me in the comments, what is the one single step you are going to take this week to become more prepared for a more uncertain future? Write it down. Make it real by declaring it. Because awareness without action is just anxiety. Let's turn this warning into preparation together.